Like in some ways, the more educated you are, the easier it is to brainwash you.
Hey, it's Walter here, and you're at the Think Profit podcast, where we're going to help you develop a rock-solid trading confidence and avoid the potentially endless cycle of system switching. Right, Hugh?
That's right. We're going to help you develop a wealth mindset, develop a trading strategy that fits your core personality, and help you overcome the obstacles that stop over 90% of traders.
All right, Hugh, sounds good. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's do this.
Hey, Walter, what do you think about this idea of genius versus work? Do you think some people are just born with this genius, especially around trading, or do you think everybody has to work for it?
Yeah, I would say like in psychology, a lot of intelligence researchers have kind of even early on they kind of fractured up what intelligence. Well, actually, think about when you take like an exam, like if you're in the U.S. and you take the SAT, then you have like a math, like basically a mathematical score, language or English, or like a language score, and then you have an analytical score. And when you go to law school, they make you take a test that's all analytical, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that analytical component. So like in intelligence, and there's a guy named Gardner who has this like multiple types of intelligence that are, related to different areas of life. So I would say like there is one thing that's advantageous if you have what's called normally like high IQ, or like a really high IQ, which is that high IQ is normally negatively associated with anxiety. So the most anxious people in the world often have low IQ. The highly anxious people usually tend to have a lower IQ, and the people that tend to have a higher IQ usually aren't as anxious. So that's one thing that you have going for you. And I think that could possibly help because of like meddling with trades, as we all know. You probably know as well as I do that can happen, like going in and worrying about a trade, waking up in the middle of the night, things like that. So that possibly could be related. But other than that, I would say probably more likely personality characteristics. So outside of intelligence, things like how conscientious are you? How deliberate are you? How likely are you to be, make spontaneous decisions? So impulsiveness, like you want to be low in impulsiveness, pretty high on conscientiousness, that sort of thing. So I would say most of intelligence wouldn't be related to trading success. And I probably told the story, like when I took the trading class, I think it was the same one that we've worked out later that we both took the same class, right? Yeah. The one in LA.
Kind of fly by night one.
Yeah, fly by night guy. Yeah. That's how I was introduced to currency trading. There was a guy in my class and he was not very smart, and that was very obvious, but he was also a really good trader because he just did he was the best trader of our group. Like it wasn't even like, we knew a month out, like, cause I kind of kept in contact with some of the people in that class. Actually, he was the best guy. Like he was literally the best guy. And you know why? Cause he just did what the teacher said. Like our instructor said to get in on the retracement, and that's like what he did. Like it was kind of amazing actually, and that was a real eye opener for me because I think when you're new to trading, you tend to think that you have to crack the code, or you have to like be really smart, or have some really good computers that can be smart for you, or you know what I mean, those sorts of things. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, obviously. And that was my first kind of clue along that line. So I would say my belief is that general intelligence, what we call IQ, possibly has a loose association with trading success, but overall it's not that. The only thing would be anxiety. So through anxiety, it might have some association with trading success, but that would be the only thing that I can think of. Yeah.
Do you know if that guy went to college or anything like that, or was he just?
I don't know. He seemed, and I'll be completely honest, I don't know, but he seemed like the kind of guy that might have gone to junior college.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe like that kind of, you know what I mean? Like he didn't get into 4 years, and I'm just stereotyping here. I don't know. I haven't kept in contact with the guy or anything like that, but we were all amazed at how good he was. Like we were like, wow, this guy's amazing. He didn't analyze things. He just kind of traded, like, I guess in a way, how trend followers, they just take the signals, right? And they don't think like, oh, there isn't any news to make a reason why gold's going to go up now. They just take the gold buy signal. He was kind of like that, but he traded the retracements that we were taught in our course. We had 2 instructors when I went, the main guy and then his sidekick, and I was amazed. It was pretty cool to see that.
No,
Because it gives you hope.
well, the only reason I bring that up is because I think for those of us who have gone to college, I think there is a tendency to overanalyze things. And people who haven't had that programming, they just say, hey, that looks like it's right. I'm going to do that. Right. So I think that's a good point to bring up. Sometimes we overthink things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that it's easy to like in some ways, the more educated you are, the easier it is to brainwash you.
Yeah.
You know, because if you think about it, like someone like me, I just went to school forever and I was a professional student into my 20s. And like, I got into that mode of learning from someone who's quote smarter than me. In a way, that's really easy to be brainwashed if you just naturally assume that your instructor, the person who's like has higher authority than you, is going to tell you the right thing or show you the right way to think.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways, I think that the quote uneducated, they can be more free thinkers. They don't have to be, because they could also do the same thing. Like imagine like somebody, you know, who's a roofer and he never went to college or whatever, and he's just working with his roofing buddies and stuff. And then so-and-so, this happened to so-and-so and he got gout. All right, well, I'm never going to eat yogurt because he ate yogurt and he got gout. You know what I mean? Like you could always fall into these thinking traps just because of one example, you know, the anecdote and things like that. So it's not, but I do think that as a student, you become, like you say, indoctrinated, and you get into this zone of like learning that, okay, this is where I go for this is where I go for that. And you always know where to go for your information, but that assumes that they know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And like anyone will tell you when you go into PhD or like when you go into graduate school, it's always about theories. So like, you know, like if I have a theory about personality, there's a lot of other people who are getting grants for their research, and you know they have students that they're pumping out and giving PhDs that have a different theory, right? And that's the way it is everywhere. It's only been recently, in the name of science, we've deleted some of the theories. Like, you know what I mean? Like historically, the science has always been a battle of ideas, you know, and it's only in recent times that we've got to the point where it just seems like some theories are not allowed to be discussed, and they are, you know, verboten.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, like, during a certain situation that will go unnamed, my PhD sister wrote us an email about the situation, and it was pretty much verbatim what they're saying on the news. And I was like, stop following news. But you can't snap them out of that, right? It's just so built in that it's all about the news, trust authorities and all that.
Yeah. Like I always say to people, what do you trust more? You know, the 30-year-old on the news who's reading the cards, like reading the monitor, or like if you open up a journal article, like a medical journal or a scientific journal, and read, you know, the study. Like, what would you rather get your information from? The person reading the cards, reading the monitor, or the scientist doing the work? Well, you know, and some people say, well, I don't know how to read that. Or you don't. Anyone can read a journal article. All you got to do is read the abstract, which tells you the whole thing, read the introduction, and read the discussion. Skip the middle, skip the guts of it, skip the statistics. Don't matter methods and results. Methods and results doesn't matter. Introduction and discussion. And you can just read the paragraph blurb, the abstract, and that'll tell you the whole study. But if you really want to know, read the introduction, read the discussion, and you'll know what the study was about, what they found, and what they think about what they found. So in the discussion, they'll say, this is what we found, and based on this, it could be this and could be that, and in the future, we'll look at this, you know? That's it. I mean, it's so easy to read. Like you can literally teach a 12-year-old to read journal articles, science journal articles. And yet you hear in the news, people, they get it wrong. The reporters that are supposed to be the science journalists, you know, they get it wrong all the time. My professor in undergraduate used to laugh about it because he did research on mood. And he always found that the best thing for your mood was a short 15-minute brisk walk. That was beat everything, beat caffeine, beat a candy bar, beat listening to music. Just go on a short 15-minute brisk walk like you're late. Okay. That was his bet. That was his number one thing. And yet they would release his stuff in the news and they would always talk about sex. He's like, oh, what? Sex didn't even make the top 5. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's so funny. So anyway, it's just funny how, you know, you have the power to see what is actually going on in science. And yet, as you say, we get it filtered through many, many filters before we actually see it. Yeah.
You actually bring up a good point there, and I'll take it one step further. A lot of people don't trust what they see for themselves, right? Their own personal experience. And they look at these journals, which, are probably very scientific, but may or may not be correct, right, in certain situations. And then the news is obviously not correct most of the time. So I think trusting yourself is a big thing too. I don't think enough people do that. It blows my mind, but they observe something and then they won't act on it because they say, oh no, the news said this, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And you know what? A really good doctor or scientist will acknowledge that. Like, I will remember we took our kid into the hospital once, and it was really just, kid was really young and stuff. We were stressed out, and the doctor that we had was like asking a bunch of questions. And then in the end said, and I'll never forget this, said, but you know your child better than anyone. What's going on here? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they were going through the list of symptoms and blah, blah, blah. But then they're like, but like we know that, you've been around this kid for the last 2 years or whatever, year and a half, however old. And, and it was our kid was pretty young when they went in, probably a year or less than a year, maybe. And, it was really hard to see your child sick and all this, but it wasn't like the doctor was just going to go through the checklist and let us give the data and then decide. It was like, okay, you tell me, you know what I mean? Because I know you've been around your kid every day. You understand what your kid is normal and not normal and all that. And I thought that was really smart because it's exactly what you're saying. It's forgotten, isn't it? We forget that your body, your family, what's going on better than anyone else. And so when something's off, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I think that's becoming more and more rare nowadays, right?
Yeah.
People saying, hey, what do you think, right? And they want to be the expert or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Thanks, Walter.
See ya.
All information in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not trading or investment advice.